Hi, my name's Jeff Rhodes and welcome to another video. Normally I cover Office 365, but this one I just wanted to follow up to the video you can see here. So last week I talked about writing a .NET Windows Forms application to read an Excel file and automate the finding and the copying of attachments. So after trying that out, I had a few changes, so I wanted to go over that with you. So anyway, so I encourage you, a lot of the guts of it are on this old one, and the video is called Reading an Excel File to Automate the Copying and Deletion of Attachments with .NET. So if you haven't done that one yet, you can go check that out, and it gets more into some of the programming side. But I updated that to using a delimited file instead and do it a few enhancements, so I thought that might be of interest. So let me share a quick copy of my book, even though this one's not in there because this book's about Office 365, but it's selling pretty well, so if you wouldn't mind checking it out, that would be great. Also, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't done that, and then you get all the new updates. So, all right, with no further ado, let's go over to Visual Studio and back to this app. So here's the one we did last week. Oh, and actually I have the wrong one. That's the actual one we did last week. And then here's what I changed it to. So basically I originally had an Excel file and we used some automation. So here's what happened is went and put that on the server and it ran fine, but then when it came time to automate and load up Excel, it says, hey, I'm a server, I don't have Excel. And even though we could try to get it, that's kind of not that great of reason to, they don't really want to put Excel on servers, which I should have thought of to start with. And so then I thought, well, I don't really need Excel. I can take my Excel file and save that as a delimited file. And the other thing that happened is the other video, we spent a lot of gyrations parsing through some HTML, and we dug in further and found an expert on the software. And it turns out in the original software that that wasn't the actual file name necessarily. What happened is if it had like a file add box, and if you added the file and you didn't rename it, then that was the name of the file. That's what got showed in the HTML. But if you gave it a name, so if the file was like xyz.doc, and then you just named it to Jimmy John's or something, then actually what showed up in the output was Jimmy John's, and you didn't have a way to get to the actual file name. So I had to dig a little deeper and found the right tables and stuff. So let me show you what it looks like. So this is just a little piece of the file. So what happened is we were able to get an Excel spreadsheet output from Oracle of what the file names are. And it turns out even these files aren't exactly correct necessarily, but they're close. So the first thing, I just got two records. First thing to show you, so I did a tab delimited file. And you can tell just right there that it's a good idea I did tab and not comma delimited, because the actual file name has commas in it, so that would not be good. The second thing, notice that some of them have quotes on them, some of them don't, so that's a problem. So we have to strip out the quotes. But otherwise, it's a fairly simple thing. So that's the file we're going to work with. So I changed it, instead of saying Excel file path, I just said file path and looking for a text file. The rest of this was the same. And then let me go back to my thing. It turns out when we ran it, that like a file like this, it turns out when it was in the directory, it actually had an underscore in there, even though the database is not storing it. So look like they go ahead and just put that in, at least in some cases. So I added this checkbox. It says, try replacing spaces with an underscore. So we basically try it the original way. If we don't find it, then we try it with underscores in it. And then related to that is I realized I really needed a list of all the files that we couldn't find. And you could have done it from the grid, but it's not easy to get it. So I added these too. So I have a list of missing files and then the list of ones that were renamed so that we can figure out which one, because the overall idea of this is to retiring some of these applications and want to give the user a spreadsheet of all their data and all their attachments. And so, in that spreadsheet, we got to put the right file name to look for. So we've got to know which ones are in there with a different name. So that's the gist of it. I just kind of want to run it, and let me show some code here. So I'll just put in some breakpoints in here. So let's, so we'll put something in here so we can see what's going on. By the way, at the very top, I originally had like an Excel Office interop. Notice I took that out, and I took out the reference to that. And then, so we'll put it here, and we'll go through it, and then I'll go through the copy. So let's just put that there. All right, let's run it. And it remembered, I talked about that last time, so it remembered the name of the file and all my settings. So I've gone to the second column, starting with the second row. I did have a little bit of a problem. The other one, I was just able to say, oh, let's just do 1,000 rows. And then I got an error because now I'm parsing the delimited, and it won't just keep going like in Excel. So you'll see I have a little bit of logic to, no matter what I put in there, I check it with the length of the file to make sure I don't overwrite it and get a problem. So, and then I've got our source and destination, which we'll get to in a minute. So we're going to hit load grid. Oops, that wasn't what I expected. Oops, where'd it go? Huh. Now let's start that again. Not quite what I expected to have happen. Let's try it. Huh. A little bit of error message. So let me pause for a minute, see what's going on. All right, resume there a little bit of, since I brought it from another machine. So I had to clean the directory and do the build. So it seems like it's working now. So let's try it again. So I'm just going to hit load grid, and it starts there. So let's look at what we did. So this is a little bit different. So I had, I used the file.io space. So if I go all the way up here to system.io, I had that in there already for my string builder. So I built that file list, and you see it just grabbed all the data, and then I come through. This is pretty much the same as before. So I just stepped through all the ones. And this is that math.min. Remember I mentioned that I look at how many rows I said, and I look at the count of the file, and I make sure I don't go past the count, since otherwise I'll get an error. Okay, so then I grab the file that we're on, because notice this is just an array. So I should go back up there again. So this line right here says this is an array, and I'm calling the read all line. So I got my path to my file, and then I'm just reading the whole thing right into a variable. And then now this line gives me just, so this part here, the file list, that just gives me the line. And then I'm splitting on tab, and that's why I end up with two things. So I got my ID, and then I got the name of the file. Notice how it's got the double quotes here. That's what it's talking about. So the Visual Studio showing in quotes, and then the data itself has quotes. So that's what this next line is. It's like, okay, let's replace quotes with not quotes. And I get the column -1, because it starts as 0. So if I say I want column 2, in this is a position 1. So that's why I subtract 1. Okay, so you see now I've got the attachment value, and now it's got the single quotes. And then I add it, and this part I didn't change, where I've got a generic list, and I add all those in. So let's pass all that, and I'll go all the way down here. Oops, turn off that breakpoint. So the count's 499, and I'm building a table. You might, if you watch the other video, see I now got rid of a lot of this I had where, we had different columns for whether I've got it originally or after I parsed it out, did it, and I didn't need all that now. So I just got 4 columns. Attachment name, whether I found it, whether I copied it, and whether I deleted it. And then I'm going to just make a new one. And this time, now I don't have to do any gyrations either of parsing out the HTML. I just put the attachment in, and then I'll keep going, and then we just bind the table. So that's actually even a little simpler than what we were doing before. So we end up with all that stuff. And I mentioned, you know, I've made it so that it moves and anchors. All right, so let's go ahead and copy them. So I've got a source directory that I renamed. I put 5 things in, some so I can test the putting the underscores in. I put that in. So I'm going to copy it over. So let's look at that code. So I'm updating my my settings, and I changed this function a little bit. So I have a function, look for and copy files. You know, I'm passing in, this is my query for the row view, this is the name of the file I'm looking for, this is the found column, this is the copied column. And then now I added some things. Do I want to replace the spaces? So that's a true false. And then since I'm already returning, so let's look at a return value. I'm already returning a string builder, which is how I show if there's errors in the path. So since I also wanted to populate those 2 boxes, the list of missing files and the list of renamed files, the easiest way to do it is just to pass those whole text boxes right into the function. So that's what I did. So I added those in there. So let's step into that. So you can see I basically just added more parameters. So do replace spaces as Boolean, and then a reference to those text boxes, the missing files and the renamed files. And then I added this. So I already was having a string builder of all the errors, any errors that it found. So I just kind of expanded on that. So I've got a missing files string builder and a renamed files string builder. So I can just keep a task as I'm looping through all the files. If I find one I can't find, I put it in the missing files. If I rename one, I put it in the renamed files. So this part hasn't changed a whole lot. We look for the attachments, and it turns out we don't really split anymore. I left that in there because it didn't hurt anything. So, but all of these are in the new format. There's only 1 file per line. And then I look for I get the file name, and then this part's new. So I look for it. This is the source file info, and now I need to keep, I'm going to rename this, but I need to keep an eye, I need to keep a reference to the original name in case we can't find either one. So that's why I made this new variable missing file name. And then I say, okay, and I also created this new variable, okay to copy, because I've got a couple things to try. Have I renamed it? Is it the original name? And so I just put a little variable in there. So I just say, okay, if it exists, okay to copy is true. If it doesn't exist, which I'll put a breakpoint in here so we find one, then I go ahead and try to rename it. So let's keep going on that. I'll just hit F5. Oops, don't worry about that beep there. Okay, now I do another one. So now I've got one where it couldn't find it, and then I'm going to replace. So that's where I'm replacing the name with the underscore. And then I look for that one. If it exists, this is one that did need to be renamed. Then again, I set okay to copy is true, and then I add it to my string builder. So I want them to each be on a separate line. So I add the name, and then I append a line on it. So let me put a breakpoint when I couldn't find either one. But let's go through. We covered this last time, but might as well review it. So I go ahead and update my table to say, okay, I found it, so I can set that to true. I build the destination, and then I literally just copy it to that directory. And then as long as it exists, I update that to true. So let's keep going. I'll find one where we didn't. Take that one out, and we just couldn't find it at all. And there's that missing file. So I use that missing file name, and I append it. And then come down here, get rid of that. All right, so I checked the length, so there's a lot of these that I don't have because it's most of the files I didn't bring over for testing because they have a lot of private info and so forth, so I wouldn't want to bring them over. Even the ones I brought over are just copies, random files that I just renamed to be the right name. And so I go ahead and set the text to be that string builder to string, and then I do the same thing with the renamed files, not so many, the lengths. And you can see what happens is I have a whole bunch of files that I could all copy those through or get them there. So I won't go through the deleted, but it basically uses the same thing. So idea, this one's much better for doing on the server because of the fact that I can go ahead and run those on a machine without any of the Office products, and that's how the server will be. So that's about it. Hope that that's a helpful addition to the other video, and that it helps somebody who has to go track down a bunch of files and copy them over to a new place. Thanks and have a great day.